You speak perfect English. You know the words. You're being polite, you're extremely careful, and yet when you speak, you feel like people still don't get you. You tend to over-explain yourself just to make sure that the other person fully understands where you're coming from. You tell yourself, if only my accent was different, if only I went to a better school, if only I read more books, if only I hung out with the rich kids, my life would have been better off. Now, if that's you, I'm here to tell you, it's not your accent, it's not your English, it's how you're showing up. My name is Ron. It's very nice to meet you. I grew up in India. I grew up speaking 2 to 3 languages depending on whom I was hanging out with and which place I was traveling. It's one of the first videos on the channel and I hope it goes well. So in more ways than one, I've learned to navigate an Eastern and Indian upbringing where extreme humility was taught from an early age. Seeking approval ruled every conversation. And then I moved to the West, Pacific Northwest to be precise, where independence and directness are literally the rules of the game. I have spent years trying to figure out how to bridge these worlds together because my livelihood is here. I built my entire personality here. The interests and hobbies that I engage with are here. However, my sense of community, some moral values are from India. That's where I grew up. So as someone who's a creator, as someone who engages in public speaking, and as an immigrant, I have quite fascinatingly positioned myself right in the middle of this dichotomy. Today I'm going to show you exactly why communication feels harder for immigrants and how you can finally be heard without over-explaining yourself. How to be fully self-assured. Because that's one of the most vital aspects of just existing. It determines whom you're going to date. It determines where you're going to study or what you're going to do for work. Now let's get down to brass tacks. Whether you're an Indian, whether you're Filipino, whether you're Vietnamese, or whether you're from China. And most of us, when we move to the West, we tend to assume that immigrants generally struggle with communication because of our accent, because of our language, because of the levels of confidence that each of us possess. It's none of that. You probably hear this on a daily basis where people ask you to repeat yourself. They're like, could you say that again? Speak a little bit slower. So in order to overcompensate, you start smiling more and you're extremely polite than usual and you start over-explaining things more. Now, while smiling helps, speaking slower helps, but it never actually solves the problem. Now, here's the truth. That gap, that barrier that you feel, it's not language. It's not the accent, it's identity and its preparation. Now, as I said before, I grew up in India and like many Eastern cultures, I was taught extreme humility at home. I was taught to seek permission, to seek approval. Even as a 19, 20-year-old adult, you're constantly engaging in self-doubt where you ask yourself, is this okay? Will my family accept this? And you take the same energy to a workplace. You take the same energy to any interest or any pursuit that you engage in. Now contrast that with the West where independence is cultivated early. Even before an individual is 18 or 19, they figure out what their passion is. They take risks like that. And rarely did I ever see someone asking permission before they express themselves. So when you immigrate, you sit in class or you go for a job interview, your underconfidence shows up like that, very plainly. It is crystal because we overthink, we pause, we over-explain, we hedge every opinion, and that's what makes communication feel so hard. So I've identified 3 problems, and don't you worry, I've got fixes for those problems too. The first, most frustrating, and the most debilitating problem is self-doubt. You hesitate to speak, you hesitate to express an opinion, you hesitate to give a direct answer because you're afraid whether it will be accepted. Let's use an example. You're in a meeting. Your boss asks you for ideas to implement the newest policy. And instead of actually thinking about that question and coming up with an authentic answer, you instead start an internal dialogue where you're asking yourself, what if I say is wrong? What if I'm being judged for what I say? So you give the most safest, the most mundane, the most LinkedIn-esque answer that your office has ever heard. So I'm not saying go to the office tomorrow, bang the desk, and establish authority and presence. What I'm saying is give yourself permission in small steps. Start sharing an original idea in a small gathering, in a low-stakes setting where people don't actually care about what you say. See how that lands and build your confidence gradually. Problem number 2, struggling to express thoughts in English. You know English. You can answer a question properly. Do you want to go for dinner? Yes, I'd love to go for dinner. It could be another simple conversational question such as, how was your day? Where we give the standard answer, fine, good, how about yours? So my first advice is sway away from those generic, acceptable answers. You don't need to say fine, good when someone asks how your day was. You could instead try to be direct and concise with the answer. How was your day? It's kind of messed up and I don't want to talk about it. I don't know yet. I didn't start my day. How about yours? Someone asks, what do you think about this news story? You know the facts, but forming an opinion about it naturally feels awkward. It feels slow. The fix for this problem is that you become culturally literate. You don't need to be linguistically literate. You need to be culturally literate. So when you immigrate, learn about the country that you're going to. Learn about their customs, learn about their culture, learn about the trees in the place, learn about what hobbies people engage in. The more you learn about the place that you live in, the more meaningful your conversations become. Problem number 3 is that you're over-justifying or over-explaining yourself. You soften or you over-explain every sentence that comes out of your mouth. So instead of giving a direct answer, you run in circles. Let's use a sentence as an example. My opinion is that the US shouldn't feel like it's the moral police of the world. This is how it would sound like if I was running in circles. I think so US didn't, you know there's culture, right?
I had dreams that you had.
Like every place is different. Like people should live freely.
You'll do.
Back in India, when we were... Now, as soon as I get into that rabbit hole, I'm never coming out of it. And what I say will never make sense. Because as soon as you state your opinion with we, I know immediately that you're too afraid to have an opinion. Maybe you don't have any opinion about the US at all, or maybe you don't have an opinion about the world at all. But you should be able to say that I don't engage in the current news because it feels overwhelming for me. That's not a conversation or topic I usually indulge in, but we could talk about donuts. Say what you mean clearly and unapologetically. Trust your perspective. You've come this far. You've immigrated to a different country. Please stop performing for approval. Be direct, be confident, and be concise. That's how you master communication. So I urge you to focus on these 3 things: self-doubt, expression gaps, and over-justifying yourself. When you stop performing, you will finally start being heard. So my fellow immigrant brothers and sisters, you're not failing at communication. It's not about the language. It's about learning how to translate your identity into a new world. Speak your mind freely. That's how you stop being misunderstood and you start being seen. Now listen, communication is a large topic. It involves too many nuances to cover in one video. This is probably one of the first out of the 100 videos that I might do. But for now, I hope this video added some value to your day. Feel free to subscribe because we're going to dive deeply into culture, communication, mindset, and a lot more. Thanks for watching.